Okay. Joyce, please. Have you got radishes there?
Yes, we do. Oh, no, they are, what are they, crab apples.
Sure, yours, Joyce. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Joyce. I'm here as just a community member, but my work is in past climate change. So I look at how big CO2 injections in deep time impact a global climate, and that makes me very worried about CO2 emissions today. I was thinking about all the things I love about living in Otatahi on the way here. Things like how close I am to the ocean and the ability to do a bunch of water sports and see some marine animals, the community interest in protecting biodiversity and a lot of effort to do so, proximity to the mountains and Banks Peninsula. It's a walkable, bikeable, friendly city, and there's a lot of great public infrastructure like libraries and gyms and pools and footpaths around the river and museums and art installations and events. And almost all of that starts or is funded by or the council is involved in. So I think that's really awesome, and I'd love a lot of that type of work to continue. I don't envy your position here, hearing from all of us what you're doing wrong in this LTP, and I also appreciate that these long-term plans are really an exercise in like budget allocation, and that's really difficult. And I guess what I see is like it's very difficult to shift the status quo. And as others have said, it's your job to provide leadership, and so I appreciate it's difficult, and I hope you can make difficult decisions. That being said, the number one thing that I see when I look at this plan, which others have also said, is like you've committed to 50% emissions reduction by 2030, and it is like stunning to see the absence of a plan to back that up in this LTP. And so I'd really like to see more effort in emissions reductions. I'm here to echo what people have said in the last hour, that means, making busing, public transport and cycling more appealing, and making driving less appealing. And I know it's really hard. There's a lot of constituents who don't want to do that. We have to think about, long term, we expect the city's population to increase unless something bad happens. And like shoving more cars onto the road is not a good long-term plan. We need to try to think of other ways to move people around the city. And that's the number one lever for reducing emissions. I could say a lot about that, but I guess, I know that, ECAN is a partnership with the buses, but putting bus infrastructure in helps, things run faster. I would love to see some more talk about trains. And it looks like there are 22 cycle projects whose funding has been decreased that were in the last long-term plan that were approved and they kind of like disappeared or their funding's reduced. So that seems like a very good place to not let the ball drop. Love to see that fixed. And I'd also just like to see, more community funding like the gardening. I hadn't even thought about that you guys are funding that. That's awesome. Banks Peninsula. Things I think about a lot are like, it'd be great to see a big climate change fund. Art center funding is really important. Funding for Orano Wildlife Park. Like I think Wellington Zoo is getting like $6 million from council, and it shows. Great work with like community waterways partnership stuff, like rewilding work, more attention on the foreshore, freshwater protection. And I love seeing like libraries, public spaces, events, and I think that's money well spent. And I know it's all about like funding issue. I personally strongly support a rates rise, and I also like, the stadium cost is like something around like 680 million from my 3-second Google search today, which I think is very close to like what CCC gets from rates, about 680 million a year, which is kind of interesting. And it's tough. And I guess, I would love to see more support for community projects and emissions reduction. And I'm not out of time. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Right, Tim?
Yeah, look, it's, with public transport, so I was in Sydney recently and I got off the plane, hopped on the train, got right into the quay, then hopped on a ferry, then walked to where I was staying in Manly. But the population in Sydney is obviously around 5+ million people. The cost of the train to the quay was $28. I thought it was a bargain because I'd never use a private car over there.
Yeah.
But what do you think how do you think we can structure our public transport to A, be effective, but B, be affordable? Because if it's not affordable, then we have to subsidise it. And I was just looking recently, I think there's 47 councils in Britain that are facing bankruptcy. So the model's broken.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm certainly not the person I would ask to make that. I mean, or I would say I'm happy to write you that report, but I think it's a big question, but an answerable question. I guess a few thoughts I will offer are, I definitely think like work to have lower rates or free buses for certain populations is great. I mean, free buses for everyone is even better, but I understand that's a tricky scenario. I guess I'll offer, I'm in my 30s. I recently learned that most of my friends that are my age group don't take the bus at all. They don't even have a bus card. And I take the bus a lot. And I also relied on the bus when I had a medical issue earlier this year and I couldn't drive or cycle. And my friends that don't take the bus are like, I've lived somewhere else with really good public transport. It's way faster. And so I think like, increasing the speed, I mean, it's tough, right? You have to make like a positive feedback loop, basically. Like you have to invest more to get more people taking it. And then I guess you could look at like, how are you going to make sure you got enough funding? But I think it's an answerable question that like
Thank you.
report could probably help with.
Thank you very much. Well done. Is Joe here? Nope. Okay, Frank, please.